How's it going, YouTube? This is the Atheist Chef. Now, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a long time, and that's make a G-Man video. Yay! Yeah, I know. It's been a long time since I've done it, and people like Redline were very excited to see me that I wasn't going to do it anymore. But you know what? To be honest, is I owe my success to my channel at first. At least the starting ground was off because of G-Man. I made a whole bunch of videos about G-Man, and that was where I met a lot of YouTube atheists. So, every once in a while, it's nice to come back to my roots. It's kind of like getting up on a bike. You're like, man, this feels pretty good. I haven't been on it for a while, and then you start going uphill, and you're like, fuck, why am I doing this to myself? But anyway, so it's been a while since I've made a G-Man video, mostly because he's been doing a lot of Google Hangouts, and hey, that's 4 or 5 hours. And, yeah, whatever. So this video, it's about 15 minutes long, his video, and I'm going to try and edit out a whole bunch of stuff, so hopefully I shouldn't take anything, out of context or anything, so it won't be a whole streamline of his video. I'm just going to strike the, the important parts. So, let's begin.
There are a lot of things that the atheist community or the agnostic community or the scientific community is saying to you people out there that are causing you to doubt and leave the faith. It's not causing you to think.
Anybody catch onto the fact when he was going to say it's making Christians doubt? He was doing this little motion, the universal sign for thinking. But at the same time, he was trying to say that Christians that were doubting weren't thinking. It's as if his hand gestures were defying what the point he was trying to get across. Just kind of found that kind of funny. But, also, how can you say that they're not thinking, when they're doubting? I mean, just by the basic definition of it, you kind of have to think to be able to doubt. And I remember back when I was a believer, I did a whole lot of thinking. And I wouldn't have gotten to where I am if it weren't for that thinking. So, no. No, you can't say doubting is not thinking.
This is the argument, guys. My first question I ask those of you in the atheist community is this, especially if you're going to make a response video. Okay, my first question is this. Okay, has anyone since time has been recorded, since we've been recording history, has anybody ever presented evidence or proof for the existence of God?
Christians have come up to the rest of the world and said, look, here is our evidence and here is our proof for God. Whether it's claiming, some sort of rational, reasonable, logical evidence, they've presented it. But of course, as we've engaged it, we've always been able to find the flaws, the fallacies, or just found reasons to find that argument to not be that convincing. Or, and obviously the Christians aren't going to have a physical evidence for God because they argue that there is God is supernatural and therefore there should be no real evidence for God. But that's just a long, treacherous, bumpy road to really go down. But no, as far as if you're talking about the kind of evidence that's empirical, that's justifiable, that's objective evidence, no. Subjective evidence, absolutely.
Evidence is the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. You have to keep that definition in mind for what I'm about to say, because now I'm going to give you the available body of facts or information before we can indicate anything. This is factual information, guys. I'm a Christian. Okay? The Bible thought we nuts a Christian. Matthew 4:19 is a Christian. And we have several billions of people out there who are either Christians or theists.
G-Man, you do not get to compile, say, several billion Christians and theists because you can be a theist and believe in another God. For example, Christians, about 2.2 billion people. So yes, you have a lot of people, that claim themselves as Christians. Bet you about less than half of those of you, I'm sure you would probably agree, are a true Christian, or probably even less than that. Assuming only about 30% of them are creationists, I'm going to probably say that about 30% of that 2.2 billion, and don't make me do math, is what you would probably call a true Christian. But that's neither here nor there. Secondly, Islam, there's about 1.5 billion people. They're the second largest, and they don't agree with the same God that you do. And most importantly, it may be a fact that you believe something, but that does not make it a fact to prove Christianity. And you wouldn't want that to be the case, Gman, because again, the fact is there's 1.5 billion people that believe in Islam. So that would be a fact for Allah. Or all the, I don't know how many people actually believe they saw aliens, or that throughout antiquity, through all the various gods that existed, there were millions upon millions, those other different gods. That's not a fact in favor of Christianity. It may be a fact, but it does not bolster a claim, bolster the truth or the validity of a claim.
Okay? Now here's the thing. Those are the available facts or information. Okay? Now the next half of the definition is indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. Okay? My question for the atheist community has been this. If there is no evidence for the existence of God, why do so many people believe that God or a God exists?
Because from the moment they were born, whether they were raised in a certain religion or a certain area where religion was most popular or not, they were surrounded by some type of environment, whether it's by their family or friends or loved ones. They somehow, or even by people they hated or didn't, or learned it in school or whatever, they were introduced to the concept of a certain God. And people gave out evidence or proofs or reasons to believe in quote-unquote God. They were convinced by that evidence, whether or not that evidence was objectively, either was an objective evidence or something that was even justifiable. They were simply convinced of it. We've all been convinced of things that aren't true. We've been convinced of Santa Claus. I'm not trying to compare God to Santa Claus. I'm just saying we can be convinced of things that aren't necessarily true.
That's question number one. And then question number two is, why do I believe?
As I just said previously, basically, you began to believe because you were convinced by claims, the claims of evidence and claims of proof, and then argumentations and whatnot. Maybe it was from your family, maybe spending time with them, I don't know. But you were convinced by something. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, though. Again, Santa Claus.
If you don't know what convinced me that God exists, or you don't know what convinced those 6.5 or 7.5 or how many billion people out there that believe that there's a God or gods, if you don't know what convinced them that a God or a gods exist, then how can you say that there is no evidence for the existence of God?
Once again, 1.5 billion people believe in Allah and can use the same exact argument as you can. Why should an outsider look at that and think that maybe both are true, but except they can't because both religions say that their God is the only God? And secondly, many atheists are former Christians and know exactly why, people believe God. I remember when I was a Christian, I thought I experienced things from God. I had feelings inside my body and in my, what I could deemed as my spirit. I felt peace. I felt calm. I felt relaxed. I felt joy. I felt happiness. I felt love. I felt all sorts of things that I could personally say, yeah, that was my personal story for why I think, God exists, because I experienced something. And I remember when I got into a wreck and I thought for sure I was going to die. And I technically should have, because there was something that should have basically gone through my skull. And it didn't. and my seatbelt had saved me. And I thought that was my proof for God, because I should have died. But so what? It doesn't mean anything. It's just subjective experience, subjective evidence. So even if all 6.5 billion people believe in a God, it doesn't mean anything. Again, we used to believe in a flat earth too.
What you cannot do is tell me that the evidence that was presented to me wasn't considered good evidence, convincing evidence, great evidence to convince me.
If there is an atheist out there that says that the evidence that the Christian has doesn't count because it wasn't convincing to the Christian, then please point them out to me so we can all point and laugh at them. Because it's obvious the evidence was good enough for you because you're a Christian. So obviously whoever is arguing that is new to the game. So if you've been in the game for longer than 12 seconds, you probably wouldn't want to use that argument. Anyway, so
the kind of evidence that brought me to the faith is evidence based on faith.
This sentence does not make sense. You say it was evidence that brought you to the faith, but the evidence was a faith-based evidence. So you would have to have had the faith first before you had the evidence. Coincidentally, according to the way the understanding how, especially how with Hebrews 11:1, the understanding of it is that the faith, they used faith by the evidence they got from faith by saying, look what God has done, and take that evidence and make that your reason for trusting what he'll do in the future. However, that's a kind of a faith-based claim that he had actually done those things. So just really, really, really bad evidence. But the fact is, faith was what brought you to the faith, not evidence.
And here's the thing. I'm sitting on a chair here. Okay? I know that there's a certain amount of information about this particular chair. Okay? And I know that there's a certain amount of weight that scientists say that this chair will be able to hold up. But how do I show that I trust this information? How do I show that I think this information is valid? I have to take a step out of faith. I have to sit in the chair. And now I demonstrated that I actually believe that this chair can do what it's doing. That is biblical faith.
Gman, whenever you were little and you started to learn how to climb on things and you climbed up on chairs and you started to sit on chairs from a very, very young age, you learned very, very quickly that chairs could be sat upon. And then you figured out what chairs couldn't be sat on, what things wouldn't hold your weight. You learned it at a pretty young age. And as you grew older, you experienced sitting on all kinds of things. And you did very rough, quick calculations of what would and would not work. So, when you sit on a chair, you are not using faith. You are making an assumption based on evidence of all your prior experiences sitting on chairs. Secondly, you cannot conflate the definition of faith as in a faith with a religious standpoint or a faith in God as in the complete trust in an object or something. Those are two completely different definitions. You cannot conflate those two.
Not the blind faith a lot of you claim Christians walk by. And remember, every time one of you say, I walk by blind faith, that is a positive claim that you have to be willing to back up.
This argument is and I have to agree with Gman, is a terrible argument. This is one of those arguments that I think that needs to die, and it'll probably show up in my Diamonds in the Rough series of bad arguments. The claim that a Christian believes in blind faith, not necessarily true, because I believe that Christians have received some sort of evidence, some sort of proof. They were convinced from it. And I would know this because when I was a believer, I was seeing all these people around me all these people, praying in tongues. I could look out into the audience and I could see this. And I could say, like, oh, I experienced this good, funny, fuzzy feeling, and everybody else was telling me they were experiencing these same things. And, people were telling me they were getting healed. That was evidence to me. And it's that same way with Christians, as well. So, yes, I have to agree. Anybody that says blind faith, yeah, it's a bad argument. But I'm going to say it again. Santa Claus.
What keeps me in the faith? Empirical evidence. Let me show you what I mean by that. Empirical evidence is information that is acquired by observation or experimentation.
Observation or experimentation. I want you to hold on to those two words when you listen to the rest of what Gman has to say.
This data is recorded and analyzed by scientists and is an essential process as part of the scientific method. The scientific method begins with scientists forming questions and then acquiring the knowledge to either support or disprove the scientific theory. That is where the collection of empirical data comes into play. Okay, so let me put it. So, for those of you who don't know what this is based on what I read, basically, when an atheist asks you for empirical evidence, they want something they can see, taste, touch, smell. They want something that they can actually see with their physical eyes, something that can be explained naturally.
I want you guys to see what G-Man did there. He defined empirical evidence, and I agree with the definition that he provided when it was coming out of the book. But when he tried to, break it down or bring it into simpler words, he kind of forgot those really important details that observation doesn't mean we physically observe it. For example, we can't really observe, when we started to experiment with atoms, we couldn't physically observe them, but we knew their effects. We knew their effects on the universe and in the world around us and everything. So observations are not just physically seeing, touching something, smelling or whatever. There's a difference, and that's the crucial part that G-Man seems to forget.
Okay. A lot of you already know my answered prayer argument.
Dear Flying Spaghetti Monster, do I ever know your answered prayer argument? I even done a video about it, and I'll link it down below. But I don't know why I'm doing this. I just keep subjecting myself to this.
But because I have a lot of new traffic coming into my channel, I will briefly give it to you. I believe that you can get a prayer journal. You can keep track of your prayers. This is just a condensed version of it, guys. That you can keep track of your prayers. You can be able to write all of them down, and you'll be able to tell when you make those prayers and when and how they're being answered.
In my reply video to you, G-Man, I mentioned that I had made a prayer journal, and I made a prayer journal to the jug of milk. Now, I never really showed it in the video because, well, I was trying to save time, but you know what? Here we go. This is my prayer journal. Let me give it a second, see if you can let focus. There we go. To the jug of milk that I made a good while back. I only did it for about a week because, well, it was just for just a reply to I'd seen your video, like it was like late September or mid-September, and I was replying to that, but then I kind of forgot after about a week. So here you go, milk jug prayer journal there. I prayed some things. First off, let's look at October 1st. I had said, Lord Milk Jug, help me through this day. And boy, I was able to get through the day just well. And help me get a second job. And I actually referenced this in my other video when I actually, a few days later, ended up getting a second job at GameStop. Help me figure out this patient needs. Well, therefore were my job. The patient had some needs, and I guess I figured it out. And then find some car keys. I eventually found that later. So far, the milk jug is doing pretty good. Let's see. Help me perform better in PlanetSide 2 so I stop sucking. PlanetSide 2 is an MMO FPS. And apparently, I got a big old X because apparently wasn't doing any better. Then later on, so October 4th, I prayed, give me strength to deal with for the new coworker. And I got some new strength to deal with a new coworker. A little bit later, I put, help my family understand my atheism. Well, That didn't work out that well because we got in a big old fight that day because I knew something was about to happen. So that didn't really go so well then. Let's see what's next. October 5th. Please, dear Lord Milk Jug. Slower line, or yeah, some shorter lines at Walmart. Well, got a big old X there because Walmart did not change, so he didn't answer my prayer. Back hurt, heal my back. Well, again, that he didn't heal my prayer there, so that must have been a no, maybe. Wait. But let's see. We go to October 6th. Heal my back. That still didn't happen. Then I said, give me strength to work, and I was able to make it through the day, apparently. October 7th, heal my back again, and finally it got healed. Maybe that was a wait, one of those things. He wanted me to wait till the 7th to get healed. And then help me find my mom's dog because he had escaped and had this tiny little thing in Louisiana, so there's like wolves, coyotes and alligators and shit, so eventually I was able to find her, and then so I guess that's the end of my prayer journal. So, that, my friend, is a proof that the milk of jug of milk is, he's a real God, because I got yeses, I got nos, and I got some maybes and waits, but eventually all of my prayers got answered.
I have said many times on YouTube that all of my prayers have been answered. Let me explain to you guys what I mean by that. Number one, I get yes, I get no, or I get not now. Or sometimes I get the wait, okay, from God. You can't say no is not an answer. You can't say yes is not an answer. You can't say not now is an answer.
Want everybody that's a Christian, that is, a firm believer in the, prayer is proof. I want you to stop and think about what he's saying. His answers are yes, no, maybe, / wait or whatever. That's all there is. That's the only options. There can't be anything else. So of course it's being answered because there's not a reply that's not included in Gman's, argument. That's why it works so well for the jug of milk. Because regardless if you believe the jug of milk can actually answer the question or not, the things that were happening that I prayed for actually either happened or didn't happen or I waited and later it happened. There's nothing else that can be done.
And this is the thing. A lot of you are going to be like, well, that's unfalsifiable. Okay. Guys, I'm just telling you my own personal testimony. If you don't believe it, go about your merry way.
I cannot go on my merry way because you have made a claim that I can track my prayers, or a Christian can track their prayers to God, and that, they could see that when it's yes, no, or whatever, you can see that your prayers got answered. Then, when somebody points out that it needs to be falsifiable to be considered empirical evidence, or that the claim can be considered falsifiable, you then backpedal to call it your personal testimony. Well, that's not how it works. If you want to call it your personal testimony, if you want to backpedal to that point, then it's no longer empirical evidence for your hypothesis. You cannot have your cake and eat it too.
But I'm just telling you guys what my testimony is. Now, I would call it answered prayer. Many of you would call it empirical evidence.
I don't even think you want to know what I would call it. I don't even think I'm allowed to say it on camera. So Gman goes on for about another 5 minutes saying that, calling people out, and then argues that no one can prove that, he wasn't convinced by the evidence. And because he's obviously convinced, obviously there's something to it. Now, I've said this in a few other points, but people are convinced of all kinds of things that aren't true. People are convinced that, I'm sure you would agree that Loch Ness Monster isn't real, Bigfoot isn't real, that Allah is not the one true God. all kinds of things like that. People believed in Santa Claus, and people also believed that the New Orleans Saints was a good football team, and I know you want to believe it, but they're not. You can wear the jerseys and the fake helmets and have the banners over your car and support them all you want, but just because you believe they're a good football team, it does not mean they are. I know I'm from Louisiana and I'm not supposed to be saying those things before I get hung up. And if I die, it's because somebody in my subscriber base is a Saints fan and they've come and hunt me down. But I had to say it here. Oh, wait, where were we at? We're talking about Christianity? Oh, yeah, okay. Just because people believe in things, it doesn't bolster any claims. I don't know where you're going with this argument, G-Man. Anyways, this is the Atheist Chef signing off. Peace.